Hola, and welcome to La Lección de Ser y Estar. If we haven't talked much about ser and estar yet, buckle up because this is una lección un poco difícil. This is kind of a difficult lesson. We are going to come to our first fork in the road where we want to say something like I am or she is. We have two choices. And how do we decide? How do we conjugate? Well, that's what we're going to learn hoy. So let's just get started right away. You should be in some ways familiar with the first verb I'm going to provide you because we've spoken about this. Let's get a little bigger in Lección dos. So as I'm always doing, trying to thread you through the different videos. If you haven't gone through Lección dos, I would definitely recommend checking that out before you arrive here at Lección tres. But if you're in the right place, if you're here for review, whatever brings you here, gracias por estar aquí. And let's get started with a little review. So ser is to be, just like estar is to be. But we need to know specifically when to use ser. If you only had this minute to watch this video, I would say ser is for permanent things. And then you could cut off the recording and go do something else. But really, there's more nuance to it. There are many specific reasons that we want to use the verb ser. So date and time, nationality, personality, description. Do you see how all these words are just very wordy and not very, I don't think, helpful? My recommendation, which I may have shared with you in Lección dos, is I don't think you need to memorize these. Is it nice to know them, especially date and time, because that will come up later on, especially in Lección cuatro when we talk about date and time. But I don't think you need to memorize this entire list. I do think these last 2 points about locations kind of broadly are useful. But overall, we're not going to memorize these, okay? And as we are always doing in these videos, keeping it moving. If you want to take a screen cap of all of these and put them on a flashcard or start committing them to memory, absolutely do that, okay? But if you would prefer instead to just stick around for Estar and memorize that list, it's short and sweet. You could use kind of binary thinking to say, okay, if it's Estar, one of these 3 reasons, good, my work is done. If it's not one of those 3 reasons, then it must, by deductive reasoning, be ser. A little way to hack your brain and not force it to remember all these shun and iti and all these weird words that I have here. And yes, they are English, but I have trouble remembering these. Okay, let's take a look at our gráfico or our chart. Do we need to memorize this chart? Yes. Is there any logic to why it's an S here and here and here and here, but then there's E's randomly? No, this is an incredibly irregular verb. So there's no rhyme or reason to why the things are the way they are on this screen right now. You are going to memorize, memorizar. So your job is to take this, put it on a flashcard, put it on your refrigerador, on your fridge, do something that will make this a part of your day-to-day, enough so that when you get a couple more videos deep, you already know these really well. You'll have an oportunidad in Lección 5, where I'm going to show you this chart again. And hopefully by that point, because it'll be a couple, videos and or weeks from now, you'll be able to say with confidence, I know what all of these conjugations are. But let's just hear them real quick. So one is yo soy. And note that the I is from the yo, the soy is from am, right? So that's what they're correlated to. This is a verb. To be is an action, so to speak, even though it's a bit strange. And you can see in English over here, am, are. There are conjugations in English as well. There's just not as many of them. So this might feel a little weird. Tú goes with eres. And you'll remember that there's 2 types of you. The one that we're using up here for tú is informal. So this is with someone you're familiar with, maybe a friend, un amigo. And then also note the pronunciation here. El, ella. Try those first. El, ella. So we want that ya sound in the middle. It's not ella, it's ella. And usted is our next one. Okay, so él, ella, usted, es. If I had to guess, this is the most common use of ser anywhere. By the way, we're conjugating right now. So we took ser and we have, in theory, we should have done some steps to get these answers, but that didn't happen for this verb being so irregular. So we're just memorizing this weird, it's kind of like a strange printout of letters. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to memorize this. So él, ella, usted es. This can also be it is. So I haven't written that here because it's silent, but it's él, ella, usted, but also it. So it is would just be es. Okay. An example, it is right behind me, Frida's studio. Isn't that awesome? Frida Kahlo. So I would just say es, el estudio de Frida. Okay. Nosotros or nosotras, your choice. If it's a group of all women, you're going to need nosotras for we. So two types of we. Somos either way. So nosotros, somos, nosotras, somos. Try the pronunciations. I know they might not sound too difficult, but these middle two right here are muy difíciles to pronounce. And so you can be pausing, going back, but I would make sure that you're pronouncing each of these so that it's not the first time when you get into a conversation with somebody. Vosotros or vosotras sois. I like to think that it's like soy as in like the milk or the sauce, and then just an S on the end, sois. This is y'all. It's only in Spain. You're not going to really use it much outside of Spain at all, really. You'll see it in some textbooks, and when you get to reading, which we will totally get to, you'll notice that a lot of translations are happening in Spain and España. So you'll see a lot of vosotros, even if the topic is like something about Mexico. Okay. Ellos, because we're doing our double L's, right? Ellos, ellas, ustedes. Son. So really hold that O. It's not like son or sun. It's son. And this is really tricky to remember. So definitely jot this down. If you have this printed out, hopefully you're putting little stars or mapping things. Ellos and ellas are both saying they, just like nosotros and nosotras, vosotros, right? Like it's just different options of gender. And then ellos group has at least one male in it. Ellas is entirely femenina or entirely female. And ustedes is what we'll say everywhere except for Latin America, okay? So, sorry, everywhere except for Spain. So in Latin America, basically. So you'd say ustedes if you're in Mexico or Colombia or Cuba, and you'll say vosotros if you're in España. But either way, you're approaching a group and looking at them saying, are you all hungry? You are whatever. You all are. And if we're thinking about our examples here, what would be a good example? Let's take our first stab at it. So if you want to say you all are, so we're trying to use either vosotros if you're thinking you're going to Spain, or like just ustedes for you all. Which of these would make some sense? Are what, right? Maybe we could say you all are kind. You all are women. You all are tall. And I'm using English words here on purpose because this is going to be a bit of a jump to add in all this vocabulary that we might not know. You all are, lawyers. You all are my friends, things like that, right? So we're just trying to make a case for each of these to make some actual sense. We're memorizing this chart, and because I got to keep it moving on these videos, keep it short and sweet, we're going to keep going. One thing you may be noting, though, is that you don't actually have to include yo, tú, or nosotros in front of your verb. So for instance, if I want to just say, soy de Colorado, like I am from Colorado, you're not likely, if I'm a native speaker, to hear me saying yo. It's just not that common because it's implied. There's nobody else that it could be, right? So if it's tú, same thing. And even though there is this gender difference, I'm still certain it's we. If I say nosotros, somos, it's fine for me to just say somos. Same thing for sois, but again, you're not likely to use this a lot unless you are planning a trip to España pronto. Okay, so let's take a peek at some of these ejemplos or examples. So we're going to warm up by just translating the Español back to the English. So the first dos actually use the same verb because we're first saying ella and then we're saying él. If you look at the chart, the conjugation's the same. We really don't care who it is in particular, just that it's a singular person. So we could say él es un padre, since I'm apparently starting on number 2. We would say he is a dad or a father, maybe. Okay, papa is more dad. Here, I'm not going to do all of them, but tú eres doctor, you might be thinking something's missing because this is reading as you, right? Informal. So maybe we're familiar with or know this person are a doctor. We don't actually write that in Espanol. We just say tú eres doctor, or I would say soy, because I'm leaving off my yo. I say soy maestra de Espanol. Let's say. Okay. So the A is not listed. And then we get a little bit más difícil down here. We're going to try this. You are from Latin America. This is a point of origin. It's one that I skipped over. You probably noticed point of origin is where you are from. So I was saying that about, for me, Colorado. If we're saying you are from Latin America, you have something you need from me or from the situation before you can answer this, right? Because what's wrong with just saying you? Problem with that? Correcto, there are dos opciones. So I could be saying, do I know this person? Am I friendly with this person? Let's imagine we're not. So we would be saying, pause it if you need to, because here we go. We would be saying usted. And then I'm not going to have my charts memorized by this point. I understand that, okay? Unless you just, say this to yourself in the mirror 20 times and maybe it starts to stick. But either way, I say, okay, I don't remember exactly what went with usted. And then I'm going to locate it on the left. That's my recommendation. Locate it on the left and then scroll to the right. And I see that it's es. So I would go in and say, usted es, we don't know from, but you may have heard me say de, that's from. And then it would be Latino America, all one word in this instance with an accent, which fear not, if you didn't know this already. Okay, so the big elephant in the room here is you're going, lady, there is mucho vocabulario. I don't know hermanas yet. And what's perfect? If you're unfamiliar with the words that I'm choosing, you have two options. Either you go straight to a translator or to your textbook or somewhere that's going to provide you the translation of what the word is that I chose. So if you see hermanas and you're like, I don't know, I want to find out though. I'm curious, what's hermanas? You put it into wordreference.com, you put it into Spanish dictionary, and it says, oh, this is sisters. Okay. Now I have the missing link to translate this whole sentence. It all makes sense. Fantastico. If you wanted, though, to say, I'm an only child, I don't really want to use this one, I'm going to say parents, and you kind of X this out and want to put parents in, you could say, all right, I'm going to replace that with padres. And then that would be like, we are parents, right? So that'd be fine. I know that looks like plural dads, but it's actually parents. So here's our, we are sisters, but I've swapped in my own vocabulary word to make it parents. And I would suggest choosing something that feels really relevante or really relevant to you, more situational. Or if you're just like, I have this stack of vocabulary cards right next to me, I want to use these while I'm practicing. Because the problem is that often vocabulary practice and these worksheets feel completely separate, right? I've chosen words that are nothing like the ones that you're studying. If you want to get bang for buck and do both at the same time, do that and see what opportunities you have to swap in your words. It also shows that you really understand what's going on if you say, well, here I've got a noun and I'm going to switch in another noun that's kind of similar. I'm going to do different family members. If you don't know what hermanas means, that might be kind of tricky, but you might try to figure out, okay, what part of speech is this? Or can I swap it in for something else? It's really obvious in the English. If you see the house, you could say the hotel or the mall, because we can make that jump more easily. So maybe this is an easier place to do that. You could say the woman is nice instead of honest. Up to you, okay? Your decision. Okay, so I'm just getting all these highlighted. If you haven't yet been looking at the companion documents, please do that, because hopefully it will help you follow along. And I'm really hopeful also that right at this point where you see me bringing in the next verb, that you're taking a little bit of a pause to make sure you're understanding what's going on here, because we are about to embark on our second of two verbs. So número dos, this one being estar, also to be. But if we're feeling really rocky, very shaky, or like we don't really understand what's going on with ser, I would go, if it were me, I'd go back to lección dos and get an intro to ser there as well. Or you can just go back to the beginning of this video, try again, try your own sentences, and then move on. So I'm assuming you're down here now of your own free will. Let's take a peek. zoom out a teeny bit so you can kind of see everything that's going on. So before, I had one word that I was using to describe ser. Okay, I said if you only have 30 seconds to watch this video and then you're going to slam your laptop shut. What was that one word? It started with a P. Permanent. Okay, so things that are not changing overnight about you are ser. Things that are your your profile. Right? I don't know if any of you have a LinkedIn, but if you're saying like, this is my job, this is where I'm from, describing yourself, describing your hobby, whatever, you might be using ser to do that. Any profile that you could make. I know social media is much more broad than LinkedIn. I'm keeping it professional. However, if it's something that could change minute to minute even, right? I don't know if you've ever been around a toddler, but they can change their mind minute to minute about how they feel. They also change location constantly, right? And they might be going from happy to sad. They might wake up with the sniffles from daycare, whatever. So basically envision this being more the toddler route, but also just it's your mood ring. It's things that are constantly in flux. It's the chart going like this. Okay. So things are constantly changing. So up top, we had permanent. Down here, we have changing. Okay. So those things that I was telling you, you're going to have to memorize 3 of them. We're going to leave number 4 as a bonus. Okay. So you don't have to memorize number 4, but the first 3 are muy importantes. I have said over the years, and I know I teach, so that's why I say it so much, but location, emotion, and changing condition. I've said it like a billion times in my life because that's the one I want you to know. That's the one that I will know until I'm 1,000 years old, right? I'm never going to be able to forget it. There's only 3, and I know that the last one doesn't make a whole ton of sense, but hopefully if you see the examples of like health, if you're tired, I know sick is kind of the same. So like if you're bored, if you're overwhelmed, if you're, any of those things that aren't really an emotion, but do feel like there's an emoji for that. When I teach kids, I'm always like, it's the emoji, right? But basically, is it the emoji with the little temperature, or is it the frustrated emoji, whatever it might be, that kind of encompasses these 2 things. And then the last big categoria or category would be location. I want you to envision your Maps app, whatever you're using on your phone, whether it has the little arrow or a pin, and things are just kind of constantly moving. Currently I am in Frida's studio, but then 20 minutes from now, I might be in la cocina, right? And so I'm constantly walking around kitchen to bedroom to office. So last one though, this is where English and Spanish do not agree. Okay. So I'm going to say in English that something tastes good using the verb to taste. Something looks pretty using the verb to look. You're going to use estar for that. I know that might feel like, come on, lady, we're already doing the fork in the road with the 2 choices of to be. Don't do this to me. Don't throw in tastes and looks today. That's why you have the option. You can opt out of this and say, I don't want to worry about taste and appearance today. I only want to worry about the 3 that I'm going to say in theory a billion times in my lifetime: location, emotion, and changing conditions, or really the little pin on your map and the emojis that you might be sending if you're big on sending emojis. Okay. How we conjugate this time makes mucho más sense. Okay. So if you take a look at this, at the very minimum, you can see some correlation between estar and these conjugations. It's like looking at a family portrait and people look similar, right? That's what we're hoping for. That's approaching what we call a regular verb. The one that we saw up above, ser, not regular at all, very irregular. This verb is technically irregular for 2 reasons. This yo form is not perfect. It's very close to being regular. And we got a lot of accents that we did not bargain for in these 3 places. So for those reasons, irregular verb. If you're like, why do I care if it's regular or irregular? I'm going to have to learn that. You told me I have to learn the chart anyway. It's verdad. That's true. The reason that you care is because when we get to lección 5 y 6, we are going to start incorporating a ton more regular and irregular verbs, verbos en presente, which we're in present tense right now, living in the moment. So it's kind of nice to know where we're ser and estar when we get there, but I'll remind you, don't worry. So here we're going to do our pronunciations. Yo estoy. Tú estás. And notice I'm really hitting that A because I have an accent here. I have to be pronouncing this, right? Él, ella, usted está. Nosotros estamos. Vosotros estáis. And ellos, ellas, ustedes están. If you repeated those with me, muchas gracias. If you listened to this and didn't know that any of these pronunciations were coming up, go back and listen again. Just hit reverse and note that these personas are the exact same. And actually, this chart on the side over here is the exact same as this one. That won't happen again because we'll bring in a verb like to wear, and it'll be I wear, you wear, she wears. But for now, since both of them mean to be, the translation is the same. And that's the problema. Your brain is going to say, I am cold, I am busy, I am whatever, and I am American. And you're going to have to appropriately decide between the two choices. So another really fancy way to make a flashcard, if you want, would be to have the two charts side by side. So I know I have them split out so that you would be introduced to them individually, but you could have yo here, estoy here, and soy here. So you'd have the two different choices that can go with yo. That's my recommendation. And don't forget your accents. That's my other recommendation. Okay, I'm going to show you some things. I'm going to show you a couple of palabras nuevas. If you have this printed, fantastic. If you have it on your computer, also fantastic, because you're following along, I'm sure. What I want you to take note of is we are not trying to learn all of these today. Okay, anytime I lay out 25 words, I am expecting and hoping that you will take at least 40% of those and just hack them right off, not do them, not learn them yet. And some of them like casa and cafe, you might go, I know that well enough as it is, and you don't need to learn it. But you're going about on your paper or on your document, highlighting or Xing out or whatever your process is. I want a couple to rise to the top out of each of these lists, because if you notice, we've got emotions or changing conditions and places. These are the main reasons we use estar. So I'm aiming to provide you with the rest of the sentence, the thing that's not, the last piece to make it, okay, I can put a period down and I'm done, right? Because just saying I am no es suficiente. That's not enough. So let's take a peek here. We've got preocupado. I'm just blasting right into the middle. I'm going to pronounce them all. But do you notice this right here? From your work, your hard work on a bunch of grammar and on Lección 2, where we talked a little bit about gender, that's your hint. What am I trying to tell you when I put an a right here? And how many options are there for worried? Pause me. I'm going to tell you. If you don't pause me or try it out on your own, try to write all the options out. Well, it depends. Okay, that's the answer. It depends. So let's start at the very top with feliz. There are actually only two options for that. There's feliz singular, and then there's plural, which is felices. It has a C, but don't worry. Okay. So singular and plural for this one. But then when we get to enojado, I'm pronouncing my A, second to last vowel, it could also be tres otras cosas, three other things, right? It could be enojada for a woman. It could be enojados for a group of people. It could be enojadas for a group of angry women, right? So if I'm with all of mis amigas and we are all feeling the same way, we are enojadas. We would say somos, well, not permanently. Estamos enojadas, probably. Okay, so the same thing, anytime you see this little here, this is my incredibly lazy or perezoso method of showing you there's cuatro opciones. Anytime you see an A here, that O can be swapped out. It can have an S added to it and so on and so forth. Triste, just like feliz, dos opciones. Okay, so you've only got triste and tristes to make it plural. Cansado is tired, or cansada, cansados, cansadas. So if you want to write all these out, pause me and just make a little aside, either in this margin if you've printed or if you have the document, just make a list below of other options, otras opciones, because you want to open your mind to the fact that this is not all there is. There's going to be más, okay? We are going to go through these. Perezoso, frustrado, pause me, repeat, do whatever you need. preocupado, ocupado, emocionado, excitado, avergonzado, and embarazada, which is only feminine for obvious, hopefully, reasons there. Okay. Why did I put these ones in italics down here? Am I just a weirdo? Maybe. Super possible. The other option is I don't want you to look like a weirdo. Okay. So I don't want you to run up to the tour bus and go, I'm so excitada for this trip. Don't do that. You are emocionada, more than likely. I'm assuming, hopefully. And if you do something silly and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarazada, people are like, sounds like a personal detail. So you would want to say avergonzada for that. Okay. So these are what are called false cognates, meaning they look a whole lot like what you want to say in English. They are not the right translation that we want for the situation. So I'll always try to let you know if it's like, don't do that, don't say that. Okay. Let's keep moving. I'm going to go kind of quickly. So you're going to pause me or go through a second time. La tienda, la escuela, la casa, la biblioteca, el restaurante, la oficina, el café, el cuarto, la cocina, el supermercado, rough one, el gimnasio. Gimnasio. So your choice right now, as you pause this video, is which are my top cinco or maybe 10 or who knows how many of these, maybe you already know some. Pick your favorites that you're going to take away from this lesson plan and practicar. You're going to practice them. You're going to study them, get your 7 touches. And note that these la and el are here because these are people, places, or things. They're nouns. So they're all going to have a gender, the, okay? And it's decided for them. Okay. Let's take a peek at the tarea. So down here, we've got just estar, okay? So you are not having to decide between the two charts. You are only scrolling up a teeny bit to say, what was that conjugation I need? And it's a natural part of the process that you have your little flashcards you made, or you're quizzing yourself in some way, like maybe trying to think of the answer before you peek, or you just print this page out and have it right next to you when you're doing this assignment. So let's say I get to, I'm going to pick one at random. Oh, I will do this one because it's a hard one. La comida is the food, which you would either have looked up or maybe you're just skipping. Rica is rich, as in lots of money, but also it means tasty. So what I'm trying to, or like yummy. So what I'm trying to do here is use the one example I told you, you don't have to worry about it. Well, apparently you do. So I'm going to try to help you. The taste or appearance. So we want to say it tastes yummy. In order to do that, you go, wait a minute, my subject was la comida. I don't see la comida anywhere over here. Neither do you. So which option is best for la comida? It's a singular word. It's not I, it's not you, it's not plural. So again, deductive reasoning states, I guess this is the closest answer I could get to. And you're going to get a lot of practice in this in the next section. So just bear with me, but this is going to be la comida está rica. And this, if we want to put the translation, because this is a tricky one, I would say the food tastes yummy, even though we did not learn the verb to taste today. And I'm fully aware of that. So this is what's called kind of a modismo, or it's a phrase that doesn't translate perfectly, which happens all the time. Okay, let's take another look down here. We've got ustedes blank guapas. Guapas is like handsome or pretty. So I guess we're describing that they are looking pretty. I don't know why I even put these in here, but I'm glad I'm doing them. Okay, so we're saying looking pretty. So I'm going to use estar for this yet again, as you were told, even though it's going to sound like looks, which is going to feel weird. And what was our subject again? I know we're scrolling all over the place. Ustedes. So you are now just searching for ustedes. If you find it fantastic. It does exist. This is an easier one because it's straight off of the left-hand side. They're not always going to be that easy though. I'm sure you can predict. So I'm going to just pop my translation in. I'm not forgetting my accents. And if I really want to feel fancy, I would be writing what this means on the side. So I would say, you all look pretty today. You could say you all are pretty today, but you know how we do that in English sometimes? You're like, well, then what am I all the other days? So this is you avoiding getting in trouble for saying this, basically. Tastes yummy, looks pretty. Or you all look pretty, but you got plenty of other options. You are just discerning who is my subject. Maybe it's easy, maybe it's not. And then popping something in the blank in terms of conjugation from this middle chart. Okay. Pero this is where it gets a little tricky, and I'm already over 30 minutos, which you know I try to stay under 30 as best I can, or at least you'll see that I try to. We need to choose between ser and estar. This is going to be muy difícil. So let me just show you an example. I would say you're going to need to take this nice and slow, and you want to feel incredibly solid on all of the ser and estar by themselves before you even get here. So if you are already kind of zapped for the day, or you've been studying a lot and your brain is at overload, pause this and come back. But what we're trying to do is decide, okay, I like to do a decision between two things. So for instance, if I want to say down here, it says usted. I have ser and estar at my disposal. I have to know the context, which looks kind of hard because maybe I don't know these words. So I say, all right, fine. Usted can go with one of two things. And actually, luckily up here, it shows me. The conjugations are either es or está. So when I go in here, I'm going to put it's either es or está. I like doing that because it gets me practice on both conjugations at the same time, right? Even though I'm not going to use one, I wrote them both down. Sometimes you really can use either one, but that's not the case here. Demasiado alto means too tall. For those of you that have seen me in person, this is like a real life story that could potentially happen to me, but at least they'd say alta in this case, right? So your height is a description of you, correct? I'd say sí. So pause me if you want to, try this by yourself, but I like to write them both out to make sure I can. I know what my two choices are, and then I like to circle, highlight whatever the option that I'm choosing, which here I'm going to say is es, because your height is not changing. That's what I like to think of. It's pretty permanent. Okay. Now down here, one more. La mujer con cáncer, you're like, ooh, is that cancer? It must be. It is. And then we've got enferma. That word you got to look up more than likely because we're new here. But enferma means sick. So the woman, mujer, the woman with cancer is sick. Now, I know what your brain is doing right now. You're getting into permanent and you're getting into changing and you're going, cancer, oh, it's a hard one to say. And I feel pretty macabre even thinking about it. Do we have to think about it though? Is the question. Well, first thing we got to do is get our options in, which it turns out la mujer con cáncer, since it's just a singular person like Raúl or la galletas cookie, or so I'm going to say the woman is just a él, ella, usted conjugation, which I'm lazy. Those are right there. So I'm going to write those down again. Okay. So it's either es or está. But what you're wondering is now, which one am I supposed to circle? Because what if she doesn't get better? That's not your responsibility. Okay. You don't have to get in the weeds like that. Because if you look back up at the rules that we were following, one of your emojis, if you remember, was the little temperature gauge, is health. So we consider this to be something that is changing. She could get better, right? Is the idea. We don't care what the illness is. It could be something permanent. That's not the point. The point is just the rule is if it's health, like sick, we're going to use estar for that. So this is how I would approach this. This will take you a lot of time to do it the way I'm suggesting, because you're going to have to write two things in every blank and highlight them. It will take you a long time because there's 15, there's 15 of them, but I highly recommend spending as much time as you need on this. If you have preguntas for me, if you want this graded, like take the time, because I would have zero problema if you said, I need una semana más or one more week on this topic before I move on to lección 4 or the video. Good. Bueno. Because this is muy difícil. Okay. So summing up really quick, because I gotta wrap this up. I know we worked on two charts today, the ser chart and the estar chart, right? We worked on those two. We also know the difference between when to use ser and estar, which up here was a ton of crap we don't memorize. And down here was location, like the pin on the map, or emojis like happy, sad, tired, bored. And then we may or may not have time or brain space for this, which is totally fine. So that's the reasoning behind it. So when we come to a scenario, the hardest thing we could do is come down here and say, I have to read the context of the situation, whether it's in your English brain or in a sentence you're translating or reading. And you got to really understand, which one am I picking, the conjugation for ser from the chart or from estar? And if you're writing out a flashcard with both of them side by side, so it's real easy to just look across and say, usted has these two choices, fill them in. You could even do that as a first step. Fill in the two choices in every single blank. And then when you have a little bit more brain space, come back and say, okay, well, which one do I think is best and why? There's also Practica online. There's a website that I refer around from like a Learn Spanish New York website that you can make the decision between ser and estar in the situation. I think that's a really good practice. So definitely check that out. And also capítulo 3, I believe it's 2 and 3 in Complete Spanish Step by Step. Definitely 2, and I think 3 starts to get into some more vocabulary, but check those out. If you haven't been in the textbook much to this point, this is a great time to get in and kind of get acclimated. They will provide you, I guess I don't need to be showing this anywhere. They will provide you mucho vocabulario. And again, treat it just like the vocabulary I give you. It is not all good. It's not all necesario. It will be there for you when you come back to it in un mes, a month, or 2 días, 2 days. But just taking a small chunk of vocabulary para empezar, to get started, is going to make it less daunting and more doable for you to say, actually, I did achieve learning X number of palabras this week. So thanks for being on this very long marathon video. Apologies for the length. However, it's a very weighty topic. And if you ever do want to go back and listen to it again, I would recommend that, maybe even pausing it in between the ser and estar sections. Mucho contenido, lots of content. When you are ready and you feel confident enough and you're getting 80% of the answers right when you're choosing between ser and estar, I'll see you back here for a lección about date and time and números. Gracias por estar aquí. Ciao.